The following is a project of our nonprofit newsroom. Support Midcoast Morning and local community-centered journalism today by signing up to be a monthly sustaining donor at chly.ca/donate. It doesn't take much money to support local news.
Hello and welcome to Midcoast Morning. I'm Joe Pugh. International students have received some answers about how much they'll be allowed to work over the coming months. The federal government provided an update on a number of temporary policies impacting international students that had been set to expire at the end of the year. Among those updates is an extension of the waiver allowing international students to spend more than 20 hours a week working off campus. The government initially put the waiver in place in October of last year, describing it as a way to help address Canada's labour shortage. It's been extended until the end of April 2024, with the government saying in a news release it continues to examine options for the policy in the future. Also among the changes, prospective international students will need to show that they have $20,635 in addition to tuition and travel costs. That's up from $10,000, a figure that hadn't changed since the early 2000s. On today's show, we'll hear how the update impacts international students at Vancouver Island University here in Nanaimo. Let's get right to it.
I'm Sarah May. I'm in my third year of taking a Bachelor of Arts at VIU, and I major in political studies. So I did my first year on Zoom from Singapore. So I've actually been in Canada for 2 years.
What was your reaction to seeing this update on the rules around international student work?
I think there are like thousands of international students in Canada, so we all have varied reactions. For me, there was a little bit of relief seeing that it was an extension of the removal of the limit from 20 to no limit. But I was very, very stressed coming to this point because I was saving a lot of money and working so many hours while the limit was still off, because I thought it might have been taken away. And knowing that it's extended to April isn't much of a good thing, because I'm just going to be doing the same thing in April, thinking that it might or might not be removed. So I'm pretty sure most people are anxious about the uncertainty of it.
Can you tell me about what the work-student life balance has been like for you so far? Personally,
I have 4 jobs currently. I work for the Students' Union at VIU. I also have a work-up with a research project in the VIU library. I also do behavioral interventionist at a therapy center, and I do babysitting when I have the time. So I do all that on top of my full-time course load, which I have to have a full-time course load to maintain my international student visa. So it's been rough. It's been a terrible semester.
I can imagine. Just what is it like trying to balance all of those things?
I mean, I think it's like anyone in society in Canada, like really trying to grind with capitalism, but I get less sleep hours. I get less time to relax. I get less time to really be myself. It's all work, school. Everything is accounted for.
And so you mentioned you're in your 3rd year, going into your 4th year. There's still a bit of uncertainty what will happen with the rules. What are you hoping to see with the number of hours that you're allowed to work as a student?
I would hope that this that the relaxing of the limit actually gets permanently taken away for sure, so that everyone's not living semester to semester, really grinding and hoping that it doesn't get taken away. That little anxiety in the last month was not great. It was not enjoyable. It was not helpful or pleasant. So if it was permanently taken away, I think everyone could heave a sigh of relief knowing that, we are part of the workforce and we are able to pay for our studies a little bit more comfortably. Yeah.
So you're hoping to see no limit on the number of hours that you can work as an international student?
Because currently it seems like it's a yearly thing or semester thing, which makes no sense because it's like a band-aid solution. You clearly need us as part of the workforce, so why don't you just make it permanent?
One of the other changes that won't impact current students is that in the future, international students will need to have more in their bank accounts before they come to Canada, going from, I believe, $10,000 after tuition and travel to just over $20,000. Would that have impacted you back in the day? Is there, what do you feel will be the impact of that change going forward?
I think for one, it's a little bit of a pro and con thing. There is a little bit of a pro to this in that it does reflect how expensive it is to live in Canada, and it allows the future students to be a little bit more prepared. But on the other hand, it also would have deterred a lot of students. I probably wouldn't have come if it was $20,000 in my bank account. I don't know that I could ever save $20,000 in my bank account to move somewhere. So it might be more of a deterrence method instead of actually encouraging anyone to move here.
Can you tell me about what made you choose VIU and Nanaimo?
That's a little bit of a personal thing because I'm from Singapore and I don't like the grind. I don't like the city. I don't like it's a concrete jungle there, and I was just looking for something that was not a concrete jungle. And then Nanaimo has a lot of trees and it's on an island. So I'm going there.
Is there anything particular about life at VIU as an international student that you wish more people who weren't international students knew about?
I would hope that the domestic students at VIU talk to more international students to know how much they're actually working, because I'm in touch with more of the international students, of course, and a lot of them have jobs that you don't know about. They're working overnight, they're doing their assignments while they're doing overnight shifts, they are doing home-based catering. They're doing all this alongside their full-time course load, and I hope that domestic students know that as much as the domestic students have to grind to pay for their tuition, we have to do it doubly more, I think, as an international student.
And you're also a member of the Vancouver Island Students' Union. What kind of conversations there do you have? Are there any conversations that you're aware of going on about just international student life from a union perspective?
We've had conversations with the university faculty itself about how university students, the international students have not been consulted as much as domestic students. So any decision that actually affects students in a major way, international students are more of an afterthought. It's they'll tell you how this affects you, but they won't consult you very much in the decision making. Yeah. So if the faculty is listening to this, I would say hopefully we are not consulted in a token way, and that you really listen to our feedback.
Is there anything else you'd be hoping to bring to the conversation today?
If the government actually listens to this, I would say please have a cap on the increase on international international tuition fees, because there's a cap of 2% for domestic students every year, but there's no cap on international tuition fees per year. So if the institutions need to raise it by 5%, they do it. If they need to raise it by 10%, they do it. Then that's because the federal government doesn't have a limit on how much they can increase international tuition.
Is that something that's impacted you in your time at VIU? Has your tuition gone up by an unexpected amount year to year?
Yeah, for sure. When I first got here, I think per semester, if I were taking 15 credits, which is a full course load, it would have been slightly less than $10,000 per semester, which is 4 months. But currently I pay about $12,000 for a 15 credit course load, which is $2,000 more. It's a lot of money. I have to work many, many more hours to make up for that.
Well, Sarah May, thank you very much for making some time to speak with me.
It's my pleasure. I hope this makes a change.
Sarah May Liana is an international student and member of the board of the Vancouver Island University Students' Union. I also heard from the chairperson of the board, Cole Reinbold, who spoke to me about the challenges international students are sharing with the union.
The major thing that we hear is that it is impossible to predict and budget for your entire degree. Because international student fees can go up by any amount at any time. And I truly mean they can go up at any amount at any time. So international students are coming to the Students' Union and they are worried that their fees are going to go up just like they did at Emily Carr University, 30%. Because the institution has the right to do that. The institution has the right to balance their budget on the backs of international students, and they will do it until they're forced to not do it.
So the idea there is that not only can the university say, okay, tuition for international students next year is this number, but when a change like that happens, it impacts the students who are already maybe halfway through their degree and haven't budgeted for a change like that?
Yeah, so it's up to each institution as to how they increase international student fees. So certain institutions, when they do an increase to fees, it's a blanket increase. So yes, it impacts people who are halfway through their degree, just coming in, where sometimes it'll be a large increase for incoming international students, so first years, brand new ones. But then the students who are currently in their degree, they get a lesser increase.
Right, and so has it happened at VIU that it's the first of those two instances you described, that students who are already here, who are already partway through their degrees, have faced unexpected increases?
Yes, that happened last year, actually. 2 weeks before exams, it was announced that there was going to be a 5% increase to international students, so in the middle of December. So students then had to scramble to get that money together. And yes, that was for incoming students or students that had already been there for however many amount of years. It was a blanket increase to international student fees.
And are there any circumstances particular to Vancouver Island University or life in Nanaimo that you feel it's important people know when we're talking about this issue, which is a Canada-wide rules changes?
Yeah, I think a little bit more context is that students can't afford to live in Nanaimo right now. I personally know quite a few students who are living in their cars and parking wherever they can in Nanaimo because the rent has just gotten so high, like the affordability crisis that we're talking about. Probably the last thing to add context is that the only thing that can make international students feel like they can plan is to have that 2% cap on their international fees.
Is there anything else you think it's important to know on the issue from the VIUSU's perspective?
That we're advocating for students every day to the institution for them to put that cap on international student fees. It's just it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it will happen, because the institution cannot balance their budget on the backs of international students forever. So yeah, we're fighting for you here at the Students' Union.
Cole Reinbold is chairperson of the Vancouver Island University Students' Union's Board of Directors.
Midcoast Morning is made possible by the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radio Meters program and listeners like you. Support Midcoast Morning and CHLY's nonprofit newsroom today by becoming a sustaining donor at chly.ca/donate. Local news can't survive without your support. Another way to help us out is to share this show with your friends and tell them why they should support us. Finally, if you're listening to the podcast edition of Midcoast Morning, go and give us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast feed you use. It helps people find us.
Today on Midcoast Morning, we're exploring the impact of updates the federal government has made to the rules around international students. International students will continue to be allowed to work more than 20 hours a week off campus after a waiver that's been in effect since last year was extended into April. The government also increased the amount of money prospective students would need before coming to Canada. That figure went from $10,000 to just over $20,600. Pankaj Jangir is a student member of the Board of Governors at VIU. He's an international student and also programs a weekly music show on CHLY. I spoke to him about the updates. Was there some uncertainty coming into this because the rules were set to expire at the end of this year? No one really knew necessarily what was going to happen. What's the response you've heard from people since this change has been made?
So almost all the people who were making use of that policy they knew that, okay, this policy will end for sure, because that came out of because of COVID and all that lapse that happened. So nobody was expecting it. So after this extension of new policy, a lot of the people, they are happy. I mean, even though they don't want to work like extra, but they do have a chance to do it if they want to have some finances.
I'm wondering, what's it like for folks from your friends that are doing this, trying to juggle working that many hours and also being a full-time student at VIU?
To be honest, it is quite difficult because there is this attendance policy also. Like people can't simply just miss classes and just work. So they have to show up for class. They have to do their assignments on time. They have to do their test. And the programs that we're taking are very hectic. Like they're not quite easy. So, but yet again, when we compare the dollar value to the currency that the people are coming from, be it Nigeria or be it India or be it Bangladesh, be it Sri Lanka, be it Pakistan, the money that the conversion is quite high. So people would want to make that money here because if you're taking student loans, it's quite expensive. And unlike Canada, they all of us have an interest rate that we have to pay, which is more than 10%. On the other hand, in Canada, it's 0% and like interest rate on student loans. So that way, students have to work. Like they don't have a choice, to be honest.
Another one of the changes that was announced that will impact future international students is that now students are going to need more than $20,000 in addition to tuition and travel costs. Before they needed, I believe the figure was $10,000. What do you make of that change?
Actually, to be honest, the $10,000 is not enough. I mean, for example, I put GIC for $10,000. I used to get $730 every month. That's how I have been able to sustain myself, even though I work for 20 hours. But yet again, that money is not enough. I mean, to give you a hypothetical example, I pay a rent of $850. I have to have at least grocery money of $400 minimum. Like I'm not even going out to eat. That is $1,250. Now my phone bills and my anything that I want to do extra, like even to buy a bus pass, for example, that costs $170. It's cheap here in BC, but or specifically in Nanaimo, but in other places it's quite high. So there's no way that students can live on that GIC. Just that they have to work. They don't have a choice. But the new regulation which says that they have to have $20,000 can be helpful for 2-year programs, because that way like my GIC just ended. Now I don't know what to do. I mean, either I take like loans from bank or I ask my family to give me money, which is not practical at this instance. So having that $20,000 in your account from the start gives you a sense of stability, that you won't have to go haywire in order to work and make that money that you need in order to just survive.
Are there any other issues, maybe specific to VIU, that are impacting international students?
I mean, the fee increase. I mean, I came here on a specific fee which I just paid. I got that money from the bank. But then after I came here, they increased my fee by 5% in the middle of it. It's like retrospective application, which is not right. But there's nothing we can do about it. We have been asking our chancellor and our vice chancellor, Judith, and the board of directors. But then the fee this year they have not increased, which is nice. Now they have derived a new mechanism wherein they have to. I think that there is a new regulation which also says that if you want to increase a fees, you have to show that you are increasing some utility for students. You're giving them something extra. That's why you're asking for more money. So now, because of the new legislation, it's not easier for universities to just increase the fees.
What was the impact of that fee increase on you that you mentioned?
Now I have to pay for example, $3,000 extra. Where do I get that money from? I have GIC which is finished. I have that money that I can only make $1,200, for example, like until this notification. In $1,200, I can't even survive. How can I pay that fees? So it was very wrong on us, and it was like a liability that we just like this came in extra without any clue, and we were all stuck. Luckily for me, I had my people who supported me, and I was able to pay off that fees. But it's not easy for anyone who to get their fee increase in the middle of their sessions.
Pankaj Jangir is an international student and a student member of the Board of Governors at VIU. I also heard from Caitlin Kellendonk, Director of External Relations with the VIU Students' Union. What are you hearing from international students about the recently announced updates to rules around international student work and the like?
I think in terms of what we've been hearing is that even though the increase from the $10,000 requirement for living in Canada going up to $20,635, this reflects the actual cost of living in Canada, and it better prepares students that are going to be coming here. $10,000 realistically just has not been enough in the face of inflation. And so while it is quite a bit more money and it creates uncertainty for some students as to whether or not they can stay or if students are going to be able to afford to come, it generates a reality of truth, which is that's how much realistically it's going to cost you to live here now.
So that was one of the major changes. Students will need to bring more, will need to have more money in their bank account before they come. The other one was announced around working hours. So in years past, students were only able to work 20 hours a week. Now there's no cap on the number of hours international students can work. And it was announced that until April, that's still the case. But after April, things might change. What have you heard about reaction to that?
I think the reaction to it is that international students are just looking for predictability. So whether they can work up to 20 hours or they can work more than 20 hours, it's more just tell us what it is so that when we come, it's predictable. We know what the circumstances are going to be rather than changing them. I know that there was a lot of fear around the uncertainty of are they even going to extend it to April, or are they just going to cut it back down to maximum of 20 hours in December? And there was a lot of fear and uncertainty about in the face of inflation, how can we afford to stay here only being able to work up to that 20 hours? So I think the feedback we're hearing is that they just want some sort of predictability to kind of know what they're getting themselves into and for that to be consistent. Because my understanding of this kind of wave of keeping it until April 30th was to honor the students who moved here essentially in September under the impression that they could work any amount of hours. Realistically, our goal as a students' union is always going to be that they should just not have any work hour limits like domestic students, and they deserve that because they're living here. But yeah, the feedback is just predictability.
Is it possible to be a full-time student at a university? And is there a cap somewhere and just in terms of hours that it's feasible to work and still be able to succeed in your studies?
That's a really good question. I'm not going to lie to you. I work 3 jobs and I'm a full-time university student. So my position with the Students' Union is only 1, and I work about 20 hours a week. And I would say for a student to be ultimately successful in a position where they're in 5 courses and they're getting straight A's, I think the reality is that we want to see full-time university students only having to work 1 job, 15, 20 something hours a week. But in the face of inflation, that is not a reality. We can't afford the cost of living and tuition off of 1 salary.
Is there anything particular to the context of VIU and Nanaimo that we should know about these changes, which were made on a Canada-wide level?
I think in a VIU context, there's nothing entirely specific that will be changing at VIU other than international students coming in. There's a possibility that with an additional $10,635 for the cost of living requirement that we see less international students. But overall, in how it affects our community, I think it's just going to make things harder for our international students all around. I know that VIU has also proposed a tuition increase for international students. So there's a lot on them right now, and we want to do our best to support them, specifically in our community, because if the work hours go down and the cost of living requirement goes up and tuition comes up, we start to wonder how do we keep these students here in Nanaimo and in Canada?
Is there anything else you think it's important to bring to the conversation on this?
I think just the really important thing that I want to just continue to bring home for all of us is that just like domestic Canadian students, these students who are coming to Canada for a high quality of education and an experience, especially here in Nanaimo, they deserve to have predictability. They deserve to know what they're getting into before they come to VIU, and to not have that change on a whim by the government.
Caitlin Kellendonk is Director of External Relations with the Vancouver Island University Students' Union. That's our story for the day. Thank you for joining me. A big thank you as well to Sarah, May, Cole, Pankaj, and Caitlin for speaking with me. We also reached out to VIU but weren't able to arrange an interview with their VP of International Education ahead of today's program. I'm Joe Pugh, host and producer of Midcoast Morning. Jesse Woodward is our executive producer, and Arby Frew is our technical advisor. You can sign up for CHLY's newsletter at chly.ca/subscribe. Stay tuned there for updates from our nonprofit newsroom and more. Our theme song is First One by local Nanaimo band Waste Management. You can find more of their music on their Bandcamp. If you have a story you'd like us to cover, email us at news@chly.ca. That's all for now. I look forward to speaking with you on another Midcoast Morning.
Midcoast Morning would not be possible without the funding of the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radio Meters program and listeners like you. Midcoast Morning is a project of CHLY's nonprofit newsroom. Support nonprofit journalism in Nanaimo and on the Salish Sea today by becoming a monthly sustaining donor at $5 or more per month. Support the program at chly.ca/donate. If you're already a supporter, record a voice memo telling others where you're listening from and why they too should support our work. After you're done, you can email it to us. Also, share the podcast with your friends. While Meta is blocking Canadian users from sharing news content on their Facebook feeds, you can still share our podcast directly with your friends via Facebook or Instagram Messenger. Finally, this program acknowledges and gives thanks to the Snuneymuxw First Nation as we broadcast and podcast from their traditional territory. Thanks for listening.